Not too long ago I had creative block, and the only thing I could think of was how do I represent this in a photo. Now I made this very super simple sketch. It was meant to be untidy. However, with a little bit of polish, we have today's design. Now you're going to need to go ahead and check out the requirements down below for everything that you're going to need for today's design. The palette, the third-party brushes that I've added, which are free in the description, as well as the canvas size for today's design. And did you know I post 3 exclusive tutorials every single month over on my Patreon? There's a link in the description down below. And as always, at the end of the tutorial, be sure to come and share your designs with me over on Instagram. So with all that said, let's get started. So once you've created your canvas, the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is go up to our colours. And in the palette, we've got the colours for our little monster, as well as some other darker tones. But down here in the bottom left is going to be our background colours. We're going to tap on that and simply drag it onto the first layer on the screen. So then what we're going to do is we're going to go up to our layers and we're going to create a new layer. We're going to change our colour and we're going to double tap at the bottom of the disc to select black. And in the description, you'll find the different set of brush lines that we've got for today. So the lining brushes. So I'm going to use the Perfect Sharp Line Art Thick. And the brush size is the little memory one here of 14%. And then starting at the bottom here, we're going to go ahead and join our line all the way around of the body and join at the bottom. Because of the way this brush works, you're going to end up with a sort of odd little loop here at the bottom. I'll show you that in a second. So we're just going to go ahead and draw in the body of our little monster here. And then hold your pen down at the end to get a nice perfect shape. And something like that would do. And this is what I was referring to at the bottom. We've got a little bit of difference in the weight. So when you start with your line, it's a little bit thinner with its weight. And as you sort of make your way through it, it's a lot more blunt towards the end and not heavier weight. But for the minute, that's fine because we're going to hide this behind what will be the little iPad anyway. So we're going to grab our cursor. I'm just going to pop that in the center and just make sure with snapping turned on here that you are on that nice central line. So I'm just going to pop it just there. And tap on my cursor. Now that might be a little bit big, but we can scale it all down afterwards. The next step is to go up to our layers and let's create a new layer. And we're going to simply just draw in a little horn that just sits on the top. So we're going to start inside the body and come out of the body, and then hold your pen down if you want to, just to make sure it's nice and rounded. A little something like that for size. Let's zoom in on that for a second because we're going to go ahead and create nice little creases that run around it where it enters the body or the top of the head. So we're just going to come around here. Come around and then just let that run out round behind, and then from there we can create 2 nice little creases as well that just come around. Just give a lot more sort of animation to these little areas at the top. And now for a moment we're going to go ahead and go to our layers and we're going to swipe this layer to the left and duplicate it. Then grab your cursor, and if you've still got snapping turned on, you just need to flip this horizontally and move it perfectly across, and you get the little blue lines that let you know you've moved perfectly horizontal to the original object. So a little something like that. And then tap on your cursor when you're done. And if anything, they could probably both move just a little bit closer to the edge. So a little something like that. And I'm going to grab this one too and just move it a little bit closer to the edge. Tap on your cursor. Now of course at this stage you'll notice that we have the body that is running in behind, but it's actually showing through our horn. So for this we're going to go back to our layers. We can pinch the 2 horns together. Then we're going to go ahead and go to the body and tap on it and mask it. Now a mask we've added is completely white, but what a mask allows you to do is if you're painting on the mask, and make sure you're on it, and you've got black selected, black will hide and white will reveal. So because we're painting in black, we can simply hide part of this line. So it's a way of being able to erase, but without sort of making it very permanent, because I can at any stage go back in and paint with white and reveal that again. So we're just getting rid of that on the inside of the horn there, and there you go, your little monster's horns have come to life there. Let's go back to our layers and let's create a new layer. We're then going to work on the expression of the eyes in the center. Now we're going to start with the actual eyelids and their expression first, because there's no sort of eyebrows with this monster, so it's just the eyelids are going to really give away most of the emotion. So I'm going to start on this left side where we have a really high raised eyebrow. And then once you've done that side, we're then going to do the right hand side as well. So from there, we're just going to, just not so much a sort of raised peak as this side, just a sort of subtle one. So we're just going to start here and just little eyebrow like so. So this side is going to be a lot higher than this side. So it just gives you that impression that there's a raised eyebrow there, kind of thinking sort of emotion. Now, if your lines are a little bit off like mine, you can grab your cursor and just move them to where you need them to be, probably a little bit higher, such as here. That looks pretty good for positioning, and then tap on your cursor when you're done. And then we can go ahead now and add in the loop for the bottom of the eye. So you want to start slightly inwards of your line that you just created above, and just create these little loops underneath. Holding your pen down if you need to, just to adjust the sizing, and they can be a little bit off from each other. Again, you've got one maybe slightly more shut than the other one, or maybe one slightly facing a little bit more. And then from there we can just add in some sort of frowning lines. So just from the center we can just add in some little frowning lines in the middle there. The next thing then would be to zoom in, and we're going to go ahead and create a new layer, and we're going to add in the little sort of eye pupil. So we're going to go ahead and just draw in a little loop. I've done it on a separate layer on purpose, so we can do something like this, and then let's maybe link them up at the bottom and then drag and drop the color in. And then we can go to our layer and swipe that to the left and duplicate it. Go to your cursor and flip it horizontally so that you have the exact same pupil, and we can move it perfectly across from the other one, just to make sure things are nice and even. So make sure you stay on those 3 lines, tap on your cursor when you're done, and there you go, you've got the eyes now ready to go. And I'm pretty happy with that. It looks nice and animated, and we've got one slightly bigger and more, frustrated than the other side. And then we can go up to our layers, and then everything for the eyes we can actually now pinch together. So we've got the 2 pupils, and we've got the actual eyes themselves. There you go. The next step would be to create a new layer, and we're going to go ahead and add in the mouth. So for the mouth, it's just quite simple. It's just little 2 lines. We're just going to go ahead and create one that runs slightly here. So this is the side. And then we're just going to add in the actual sort of little flick on the right hand side there. And then the only addition here to add in is a little tongue, which is just a little upside down U, and then a little line dash in the middle. And there you go, you've got your little expression there all coming to life. The next step then is to go up to our layers, and if you want to, you can pinch all these layers together for a moment and save on your layer count. So let's just pinch them together, excluding the body. Don't pinch the body yet. The next step is to go ahead and create a new layer, and now we're going to go ahead and draw in the arms for our little monster. And they're somewhat like ovals. You can do a perfect ellipse if you like, but if you want to, you can make it like an egg shape. But you can make yourself a nice little ellipse. Hold your pen down like so, and then just go to your cursor, grab the warp tool, and maybe just flatten off the end here just to round that off, so it goes into more of a point here and it's more rounded at this end. Tap on your cursor when you're done. And then the only other step to add in is the fingers. Now they don't want to be facing this way. This is the line straight through the hand, isn't it? We don't want them to be pointing down too much. We want them to be somewhat pointing a little bit more upwards, a little bit something like this. The middle one is the main one, and from there we just create just 2 more. So in this world it's only got 3. So that is your first arm. What we can then do is go to our cursor, go to the uniform option, just move this off to the right hand side. This is where we're going to position this, so somewhat slightly down here. Now ignore the body lines. Again, we're going to come back to our mask shortly. Tap on your cursor when you're done. And then we're going to go to our layer, swipe this to the left and duplicate it. Grab your cursor and flip it horizontally. Now we don't want them to be perfect like this. One is going to be somewhat holding the iPad and the other one's going to be holding the pen. Now the one holding the pen will be the right side, and I'm pretty happy with that angle. It's somewhat horizontal, so we want this one to be a little bit more vertical, and then just move this out to the side. So one's holding the pen and one's holding the iPad. So a little bit something like this will do the trick. So something for positioning like that. Tap on your cursor when you're done. And then just like before, we're going to go back to our layers, and we're going to go down to the main oval we made for the body and make sure you're on the mask. And then while you're on the mask, we need to get rid of the stuff we don't need, which is just in here. So we're just going to get rid of all of this in there. There's a little bit here that runs underneath this finger. I'm going to move across. We're going to get rid of all of this in here too. So just get rid of all of that inside the little arm there. And then just making sure there's nothing here. Just runs into our little fingers that we made. And there we go. That now tidies that up and puts the arms in front. The next step is we're going to go ahead and add in the iPad. So we're going to go ahead and go to our layers. I'm actually going to go ahead and just quickly select all of my layers and move them up. Mine is getting a bit too big for my canvas, and I'll probably scale it down afterwards. So we need a bit of space down here. So I'm going to go to my layers, and we can pinch the arms together if we like, and we could probably even pinch it to the facial expression as well, just to save on our layers. We're going to go ahead and create a new layer. And on this layer, we're going to add in the iPad. Now, again, this is just meant to be like a light sketch. So what we're going to do is we're just going to draw in a line that runs across, which is going to be the closest side to our little monster. So you want to be ever so slightly wider than the monster, and just draw straight across the screen. Hold your pen down to make sure it's a nice straight line, and go nicely even either side. You can see I've just let that run through the fingers there. What we're then going to do is go to our layers and swipe that layer to the left and duplicate it. Grab your cursor, and then just bring this line down, and then grab the freeform option and just make it a little bit longer on the end there, so a little bit wider, if not a little bit wider than that too. And something like this should do the trick. And we want to hit this blue line, which lets us know we're in the middle of the line that we just duplicated above. And then tap on your cursor when you're done. And then from there, we're going to zoom in, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to add in conjoining lines and just run into our lines like so. So that's one side done. If you want to, you can be extra sneaky and go up to your layer now. Once you've done one side, swipe the layer to the left and duplicate it. Then grab your cursor and flip it horizontally, and then just move it ever so slightly to the right hand side. So what this will hopefully do is it will just link up your lines a little bit better. So tap on your cursor when you're done. You can see it kind of nicely duplicates on either side. The only exception is the original line, where the weight, as I've mentioned, gets heavier as you go. We just need to maybe tidy that up. So I'm going to go back to the layer. I'm going to go back to this line here. You can see on the screen. I'm just going to grab my eraser, tap on it, and I'm just going to use the monoline brush under calligraphy and just tidy this up just the tiniest little bit, just so it nicely runs into the other lines that we made. So although this is quite a nice light little sketch, we do want it to be somewhat tidy. So we just need to just tidy up this line here, and that will do for me. Now what we can do is we can go to our layers, and I've got 3 layers for my iPad at the minute. We've got the duplicated one that we flipped horizontally, and we've got the actual main line there. We're going to go ahead and pinch all 3 of them together. We're going to swipe the layer to the left and duplicate it. We're going to grab our cursor, and we're going to go ahead and use the uniform option. We're going to grab the middle node and just make it a little bit smaller in height and move it just so it's a little bit like that. So you've got a little bit of a border on this edge and a little border up there. But of course you'll notice it's now got really, really narrow. So we're going to grab our freeform option and just move this just towards the edges. We're going to treat this little monster to like an iPad Pro. And we're going to move it into the corners there. And then tap on your cursor when you're done. So you'll end up with something like this, where you've got a nice little surround here, and then it gets really too close to each other there, so it just turns into a black line, which is fine with me. Now, just like before, we need to start erasing things that we don't need. So we're going to go ahead and go to our layers. We're going to go ahead and pinch these 2 iPad layers together. We're going to tap on this layer, and we're going to mask it. And then making sure we're on the mask for this layer, we're going to zoom in, and we're going to get rid of the lines that run through the hands, because of course these hands sit on top. So I'm just erasing these little bits here on the inside of our hands there, and the same over here too. I'm going to erase these areas here, and then we have the hands sitting in front of the iPad. Of course there is a line here though that we also need to get rid of, so let's go back to our layers and go down to the body, tap on that mask, and then we can go ahead and just erase into here and get rid of that little bit. And now everything's starting to layer and nicely stack on top of each other. We're going to go ahead now and go up to our layers, and we're going to create a new layer. We want to create the little Apple pencil that's going to sit within our monster's hand. To do this, ignore the angle for a moment. We're going to go ahead and create a V in the middle of the screen. Just a little something like this. And we're going to create 2 lines up. So we're going to create 1 line up, pop your finger on the screen to make sure it's nice and straight, and maybe just go back over at the bottom just to increase the weight. Pop your finger nicely on the screen again, and then do the same on the left hand side, so just making sure our pen is nice and tall, and then round that off at the very top. So we're again creating that nice sketchy look to it. We don't want it too precise. And then from there we can grab our cursor, rotate it in angle, and thread it through the hand there, so it's something like that. Tap on our cursor when we're done. we then need to, of course, look at the lines and how do they work. So part of this pen needs to be got rid of because it sits underneath these fingers. So on this layer, we're going to go ahead and tap on it and we're going to mask it. And then using the mask, we're just going to simply paint and get rid of anything where it runs through the fingers here. There we go. And now it looks like it sits in there and it's been held. Of course, the iPad line here though is running through the pen. So all we do is just go back to our layers and we go to the iPad layer. We go to the mask for that layer and we just erase into here. And now again, everything stacks on top of itself correctly. So we've got our little monster there with its Apple Pencil in hand. And then the only other little shapes that we necessarily need to add in is some little feet at the bottom. You could leave it like this if you wanted to, but I'm going to go ahead and add in some little monster feet at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer. And for our monster feet, so starting at the bottom, I'm just going to create a nice rounded foot at the bottom with a nice egg shape to it. And then on that, I'm going to create three somewhat little claws on the end. So just a little point here, maybe some absolutely whopping toenails on this little fella. But there we go, we've got some little feet at the bottom. And then I'm going to grab my cursor and just move it up a little bit, not too close to our hands, but just a little bit like that. Now my foot here is a little bit too big and it's also going to interfere if we duplicate it into this one here. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my layer. I'm going to grab my cursor first of all and using the uniform option, just scale this down in size, just so that if I was to move it across, it wouldn't interfere with that hand. So I've scaled it down. I'm going to move it just slightly here, just off to the right hand side, just a little bit more. Actually, I'm going to move it a bit more to the left. And then I'm going to go to my layers, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Grab my cursor, I'm going to flip it horizontally, and then I can move this one across. Now, if it does touch the hand, it's not a problem. You can just erase part of it, or you can just simply just make this one a little bit off, you know, rotate it, put it off to the side a little bit more so it's not completely symmetrical. And then tap on your cursor when you're done. And then just like before, we're going to go back to our layer and pinch the two together. And then we also need to bear in mind, of course, that the feet here sit in front of the iPad. So we need to go back to the iPad layer and make sure we're on the mask for it. And erase the last bit, which is just in here. So the feet now sit in front of the iPad. So you're going to get rid of all of this in here. You can make your brush size bigger if you want to. And there we go. We've got all of our line work now done for our little monster. Look how cool that looks. But this is the next step where it really comes to life, where we start to add in the polish and all the colors. So we're going to go up to our layers, and we've done everything we needed to do to get to the stage where we're at. So what we can do is we can actually, excluding this gray layer, which is actually our background color, the body and every layer upwards, we can go ahead and pinch all of those onto one layer. So there we go, our monster is on one layer. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to tap on this layer and we're going to use the reference tool. Now the reference tool means that every other layer now looks at this layer as a guide as to what to do. So if we create a new layer and drag it underneath this one, if we go to our colors, this top row is the colors for our little monster. So if I actually grab the pink first of all, the third color on that top row, zoom in, we of course need to drop this in the tongue. So we just drag and drop it into here. Now that pink is on one layer and I don't need to add anything else to it. So I can now create a new layer and we can add all the reds onto a layer. So if we go to our colors, we go to red, the first color in the palette, and we can drag and drop it into everywhere we need the red. So we're going to drag and drop it into all of these sections here. Now what it's doing is it's using the line work above as a guide as to what to do. So it's using that as a guide. So we're dragging and dropping the red into everywhere we need it, into the main body of the face, and there we go, that's all of our red content done. But our horns are the only exception to this, where if we go to our layers and create a new layer and go to our colors and we grab the yellow on the top row, this area here we just got to do manually, and all we're going to do is just simply just draw in a line that goes across the base of the horn and then go up and around. And then you're going to either need to turn off the reference, so just fill this in by either doing it manually, so we can just increase the brush size for a second and just fill this in manually. Because if you were to drop the color in, the reference of course would then take effect and we wouldn't be able to do so. So let's now go ahead and create another little line that runs across this horn and then go all the way up and around the top edge, increase our brush size, and then let's fill this in Making sure to stay within the object like so, and then switching our brush back. And then zooming out, there we go. We've got a couple of other little sections we need to fill in, so we're going to go to our layers. We're going to create a new layer. We're going to go to our colors, and then on this row here, we're going to start with the first color in this row. We're going to drag and drop this into the eyes, so just around the outside. So it's very close to our background color. We're then going to go to our layers and create another new layer. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab the next color, which is this gray here. Now this gray actually acts as the iPad screen. So this gray in the middle, we drag and drop it into here, and we drag and drop it into here if yours is separated into two. We then go to our layers once more and create another new layer. Grab your colors and grab the third color on that row and drag it into the little gap that's running around the edge of the iPad here. So making sure not to drop it onto the line work like I just did, drop it into the gap. So there we go, we've got all of our little monster all coloured in. We can now go in and just quickly add in some finer line details, which are going to help us add in our highlights and shadows shortly. So we're going to go to our layers, we're going to go up to our little line work at the top. And on the same layer, we're going to go ahead and change our colour, making sure it's still set to black at the bottom of the disc. And we're going to add in some extra, just little nice little details. So a very sort of thin looking line on the top of the arm here. I'll just zoom that out for you so you can see. And then we're going to do the same on this side, just a nice little line on the top of the hand. On the feet, we'll just add in some nice curved creases in here. On the backs of the fingers, we're just going to add in a little line here and a little line here. And another little line here and another one here. Beside the mouth here, we're also going to add in another little crease line, so just a little one like this. Let's add in a little line under the eye. Oh, it's got bags under his eye in this instance. And then we'll do the same on this side as well. So just in this bottom left hand corner, we're just going to add in a little flick. Looking up at the eye in the top right of it, we're going to add in another little flick. So just move this up. There's a little flick up here. And then we'll add in another sort of triangle look here in the middle, sort of little frowning look. And then moving it across, we're going to do the same again on this side. So another little frown, followed by another little flick just above the eyebrow, or the eyelid, should I say. Now these extra little details are going to really help us in a second, just again to add in highlights and shadows. So they're just nice little extra areas that will assist us. So the next step is to go to our layers, and we need to start adding in all the different tones. So I think it's best to start towards the bottom here on the tongue. So we're going to create a new layer above it. We're going to tap on this layer and we're going to clipping mask it. We're going to change this layer effect from normal to linear burn. Now everything typically above normal will add in a darker variation on the color that you're painting in, on the content underneath, and anything typically down all the way down to something like soft light will add in a lighter variation. So we're going to use a couple of those. So we're going to use linear burn, and you can see if I actually change my color and we grab the pink, it's the exact same pink as the tongue, but we're going to add in our little shadow. So we're going to add it in here. We're going to come all the way across, and then we're going to add in a little bit off of that crease in the middle. And there you go, you can see that by drawing it in with the exact same color, we actually end up adding in a darker tone, which is going to act as our shadow tone. Now the tongue's very simple, so we started off nice and easy. The tongue is just one tone, and we can actually pinch those two layers together now and it's done. Now we're actually going to move on to the body now, which is a little bit more complicated, only in the fact we have highlights and shadows. That's the only thing. So we're going to create a new layer again, tap on this layer and clipping mask it, change its layer option from normal to linear burn, and we're going to change the color to the exact same red here as our monster. But if we start with somewhere nice and simple, say the foot down here, we're going to come around the bottom edge here. I'm going to increase this a little bit bigger than that and add in our shadow. I'm also going to add in a shadow here that just runs on the inside of the foot. So a little something like that. That's all you need to add in for your shadows on here. And then let's replicate that on the other side. So you can see it's given us a really nice dark red tone that's going to act as our shadows. And you can see if I just run this down here, there are our little shadows for the feet. So now we're going to move on to the body, because I don't want to do the arms just yet, because we need to add in some shadows here that will compromise the arms for a second. So the first shadow we want to go ahead and do is add in a nice sort of curve underneath the bottom here of the face. So we're just going to create a nice big arc, hold your pen down, and then you can adjust that angle to a little something like this. That just lets us know that the bottom half here, if we go ahead and fill this in, create a nice little loop, and then go back up to your layer and turn off the reference at the very top on our line work. So tap on it and turn off the reference, so that if we go back to the layer we're working on, the linear burn one for our shadows, we can drag and drop the color in. And I just need to create a little loop here. And I'm doing that because we don't want to interfere with the arms. So we're just going to come around here, go around our fingertips, up the pen, and drag and drop the color in. And there we go, we've got a nice big shadow there at the bottom. We can then go ahead and work on some other shadows, such as just inside the mouth. So just a little shadow that runs in here, just where the lip's sort of on top of itself. We could actually add in a little shadow here underneath this crease. And then we'll do the same over here as well. Just a little crease. Up here, underneath this crease, we're going to add in our shadow. So the light source is coming from the top. And then underneath this little line here, we can add in a nice little shadow. Now this area here, we can go ahead and just add in a little bit of red underneath. But the horn's also going to cast a shadow, so we can just darken this up and link into that. There we go. So it just darkens up completely in behind there. The frown area, we definitely want to emphasize this, so we come down in here and just let this run out a little bit. Also this area here where the lid is just frowning on the inside, we're just going to darken this up like there. Move across and do the same on this side. And fill this one in. Underneath this crease again on the opposite side. So there's quite a lot of repetition from side to side, which is cool. We then have this crease as well, so we're just going to add in a shadow underneath it. And then here on this edge, we're going to add in a shadow around the bottom area here. We're going to go ahead and do the same, so just down this edge here, wrap it round, and then basically into the back there. So that in front of the horn, we can then just add in a little shadow area. We can let them run into each other if we want to. And then zooming out, we can go ahead and just, the only two things left is just here where we'll just add in the tiniest little bit of shadow. So I'm just going to redo that again. Tiniest little bit of shadow there. And the tiniest little bit of shadow here too. Just to emphasize those sort of creases in the face. So there you go. It's already starting to come to life a lot with the actual face now because of all the darker tones. We now need to move on to the arms, and the arms are very simple. We just create nice little sort of curves around the bottom area here, and then create a loop so you can drag and drop the color in. Very simple on these areas. And the same here too. So just round the very bottom edge here. And then I just need to create a perfect loop actually. And there we go. We've got our shadows on our arms. We're now going to go ahead and move into the highlights. So we're going to go up to our layers and we're going to create another new layer. We're going to tap on this layer and make sure it's clipping masked. And we're also going to change this layer effect from normal. And we're going to scroll down to screen. Now this will allow us to draw, but in a brighter tone now. Again, using just exactly the same color. So let's add in our little highlights. So the first place I would look at would be the face. So we're going to add in a little highlight here on the bottom lip where it's sort of pointing upwards. There you go, a little bit of color on there. Potentially just here as well, so just in on this crease. Underneath the eyes, we're actually going to add in some highlight as well. So I'm just going to bring in the highlight just under here and just let that thin out as it runs into a shadow. So I'm just going to add in some highlight there. I'm going to do the same over here. Now you could add shadows here if you wanted to, but I purposely want to add in some highlight just to brighten up the eye area just a little bit. And then pretty much all of your creases you can add highlights on the top of. So we can go ahead and here, we can add in a little crease here and just let that flick up. And then just do the same here too. This one here that runs over the eye, we're just going to follow that line, thicken it up and then just bring it back in. You see there? So it's nice and thin. Thicken it up and bring it back in. Let's do the same over here as well. So nice and thin towards the outside, thicken it up and just let that run out. And then for the top of the head, we're actually going to add in a nice big highlight towards the top. Now for a moment, we're going to overlap our shadows, but we're going to start roughly here and we're just going to create a little swoop and then adjust that curve by holding your pen down until it's quite symmetrical. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and just draw around here and create a big highlight. So we're just going to go around the top of the head, around this edge of the horn, and into here, so we can drag and drop the colour in. Now what that will do is, for a moment, it will actually go ahead and change your shadows to a lighter version again. So our shadows, although they are shadows, they're in a light area, so they've now turned into this sort of other orange, which I'm pretty happy with. I'm going to leave that as is. Now the next step is to go ahead and zoom in on our arms, and we're going to add in a little highlight here on the top, so a little oval shape, fill that in. We're going to move over to here and create another little oval shape and continue to fill that in. Zoom in out. We're not going to add in any other details onto there. That is all good with me. We have our little main body now done. We are going to go ahead now though and create a new layer. We're going to go ahead and change its layer effect from normal, and we're going to change it to overlay. And then we're going to go ahead and change our color. We're going to double tap at the top left to change it to white. Now what we're going to do is just add in some little spots on the body, which is just going to add in some cool little extra details. So in this area here, and using the brush still that we're using, we're just going to draw in different sized dots in here, some big ones, some smaller ones, and these are going to act as nice little bits of detail for our little monster. So bubbling up a little bit, so I'm just drawing in some circles in here, and they don't necessarily have to all be in the normal area. If you draw within the shaded area, you're still going to get some cool little dots, but we're going to add some primarily in the underside of the eyes and also here up on the head. So I'm going to create some little dots, and you can see with the overlay effect, it's using whatever color is underneath it to change the color that we're drawing with. So in this instance, it's like turned into quite a yellow. So I'm just going to add in some dots here on the head. So just going to add in some really cool little details on there. Maybe just thicken those ones up just a little bit. There we go, we've got some cool little spots on the head. Let's add some on the arms as well. So it's going to add some dots in here. And then move across and just add in maybe just a couple on here. And there we go, we've got some cool little extra details on our little monster. Let's now go up to our layers. Can now pinch all 4 of these layers together for the actual body and pinch them onto one. The next layer up is our horns, so let's create a new layer above, tap on that layer and clipping mask it, and our shadow variation is, if we tap on normal, we change it to linear burn. Go to your colors, grab the yellow here in the middle of the top row, and then in the horns we're going to go ahead and just draw in a shadow just down on the right side here. Just filling that in, and it's also very similar to the shadow here on the head, so you can see I'm kind of running it in close to that line and then just creating a little shaded side there, so it all is nice and continuous from side to side. And then we're going to go to our layers. We're going to go ahead and create a new layer, tap on that layer and clipping mask it. We're going to change its layer effect from normal and change it to screen. And then we're going to add in just a tiniest little highlight, which is just going to sit on here. So it's just a little highlight there, just runs down there. Then zooming out, that's our horns done. We can go ahead and go to our layers and pinch all 3 of those together. The next layer up is our eyes, so we're going to create a new layer. We're going to tap on this layer and clipping mask it, but this layer here is not a layer effect. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab the middle tone here on the second row, and then zooming in, we're going to add in a shadow here that just runs underneath this eye here, so just a little something like this, and then let another one just run following the curvature of the eye just underneath. There we go, we've got one of our shadows done. We're then going to go ahead and emphasize this brow movement even more by just mimicking that shape and really emphasizing sort of the elevation of it. So just bring this round, drag and drop the color in, and then create a nice little swoop towards the bottom. If we zoom out, our little monster now has got some really nice little shadows there on its eyes. Now if we actually go to our layers now, we can pinch that shadow to the layer. But we do want to, while we're working on the eye, just add in a nice glossy highlight. So we're going to create a new layer and drag that all the way to the top. We're going to go to our colors and double tap in the top left hand corner to select white. And then just here, just above the pupil, we're going to draw in a circle. There we go. And we're going to draw in a circle here too. Similar size. And that will just give your eyes a nice sort of glossy look to them, which is why we set the eyes to a slightly off-white, slightly grey colour. Now the next layer to work on is the iPad, so we're going to go to our layers, and on the iPad screen we're going to go ahead and create a new layer, tap on that layer and clipping mask it, and change its layer effect, and we're going to scroll up and we're going to go to linear burn again. We're going to change our color, and we're going to grab the gray for it, the middle color in that middle row. And then our shadows are primarily just underneath the hands here. So I'm just going to create a little sort of shadow here that runs here, just to show that the hand is very close to the screen. And then we're going to zoom across. I'm going to add in a shadow here coming off of the pencil. So just a little sort of shadow like this. And then maybe even just a little shadow here, just underneath the hand. I'm just going to create a little sort of shadow here. That looks really cool because you get the shadow off of the pencil, which looks awesome. We're then going to go to our layers. We're going to create a new layer. We're going to change its layer effect from normal, and we're going to change it to screen. We're also going to tap on this layer and clipping mask it to the screen itself. And this is just where we're going to add in some nice glossy highlights, and all they are just diagonal lines across the screen, creating another one here, avoiding your shadow areas, link them up where you can, and drag and drop the colour in. You've got a nice glossy line across the screen, and we can even then do something like this where we draw in a line and just let that sort of little bit there, just the tiniest bit of like a glossy reflection, just sort of show on the screen. I'm then going to move over to the right hand side where I'm going to add in some more lines like this. So just draw in a line, draw in another line, and then a third one, and then link these two together on the right. So the ones with the big gap, and drag and drop the colour in. And there you go, you've got some nice glossy lines. You can maybe just add one here on the left hand side if you want to, just to really balance up the piece. There we go, just a couple of extra glossy lines there. Now the only extra little thing to do here is go up to our layers. We're first of all going to go ahead and turn off what we made our background, so this one here, and turn off the what's called the background colour. So it's now completely empty. We're going to swipe down with 3 fingers, and we're going to go to copy all. We're then going to go ahead and swipe with 3 fingers again and go to paste. Now what you'll see is in your layers, you've now got just here a layer that's completely full of your whole design. Now turn on this layer we made our background color again. We're then going to go ahead and tap on this layer and alpha lock it. Change its color by double tapping at the bottom of the disc to black. And then go back to the layer and tap on it and fill it. Then we're going to go ahead and change its layer opacity from normal and 100% down to 20. And then we're going to grab our cursor, going to grab the freeform option, and we're going to grab this node here and just bring this down just a little bit to something, say, like this. And then tap on your cursor when you're done. And I'm going to zoom in and just fill in this tiny gap here. So I'm going to go back to the layer and tap on it and turn off the alpha lock now. And now I'm just going to fill in this little gap. I'm going to fill in this little gap. We're going to go to our layers, and underneath our line work here at the top, we're going to create a new layer. We're then going to go to our colors and double tap in the top left hand corner to select white. And then inside our Apple Pencil, we're just going to fill this in with white. And we're going to fill in these little claws on the end here in white as well. So just fill those in with white. Now there is actually a couple of extra things you can add if you want to. These are just optional. You could create a new layer at the very top, change your color to black, and we could then add in some sort of frustrated lines around the outside. Now mine is very large at the minute, my design, so we're going to go ahead and select all of these layers. I'm going to scale them down using the uniform option, so grab the uniform option, scale this down in size just a little bit into the center. And then around the outside on that top layer, we could maybe add in some frustrated lines. So sort of zigzag, very sort of cartoony sort of frustration. So these are like vein marks here at the top. We could add in some sort of spirals. We could add in some little line dashes here. And we could add in some more zigzags. We could add in some more frustration marks here. So just really emphasizing that kind of cartoony feel to it. And a little bit like this, just to show sort of the distress. And then maybe a couple of extra lines here at the top. And there we go. If we go ahead and go full screen with 4 fingers, we end up with today's finished design. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on what I think creative block looks like when you're really trying to go for it, but there's nothing coming to mind at all. So as always, if you enjoyed this tutorial, please drop a like down below, helps the channel out an awful lot. And if you're new here, I post Procreate content every single week, so hit that subscribe button. And if you want even more tutorials from me, I post 3 more every single month over on my Patreon, except they are exclusive for Patreon supporters. Now, if you want your name featured in videos as well as sneak peeks, early access to videos and much more, hit the link in the description and come and show your support over there. And as always, if you're interested in any of my equipment today, I'm using the Sketchboard Pro that you can always use code JoelCreate to get yourself a nice 10% off of. I'm still using the Ghost Paper screen cover by Upper. I don't have a grip on today, but I do have the pen tipped glove. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.